Well, welcome, guys. This is Alliances Conversations. Today, I'm joined by Ed Williams from Trustwave, and I'm going to jump straight in, and we're going to start with a really easy one. Ed, is just could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your history and past within the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Bore-da, everybody. So my name's Ed Williams. I live in West Wales. I've been in cyber or pen testing for way too long, 20 plus years. I started off as a humble Unix analyst and sort of progressed into pen testing, where I was a principal security consultant for a large pen test team, then hopped over to Trustwave 6 years ago, and now I'm the VP of pen testing.
Awesome.
In terms of what I've actually done, the one thing I always say, which people seem to enjoy, is I've pen tested everything from submarines to rockets and everything in between. So I do know what I'm talking about. I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of computer security.
Nice, awesome. Well, hopefully we'll get onto that submarine and rockets pen testing, because that's something that I would definitely want to hear more about, Ed, and the ugly, because I think everyone gets to know that they're not the only ones if things are bad. Just understanding what's going on. But first of all, I just want to jump in straight away with what are you seeing from a threat landscape perspective, but also just a second sort of back up to that is what should CISOs be aware of within that threat landscape?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate. We do a large amount of pen testing across Trustwave globally. So we see lots of different things. So we've got a really good understanding of what's happening in the threat landscape. We still see ransomware. Ransomware is still a big thing and something that needs to be top of mind for CISOs. I think 20% of all ransomware attacks is at financial institutions. So that's banks and insurance carriers and things like that. So things that are really important to us as the general public. We see lots of that. And when I think about ransomware, it's multifaceted. So it's that phishing email. So somebody's sending a dodgy email in, and unfortunately somebody's clicking on it, and then lots of bad things are happening. So we see that, we test those types of things. Yeah, everybody's been there. And if I just go sort of laterally for 1 second, you add on AI, phishing emails and all that stuff is getting better and better all the time. So that's really important, and organizations and CISOs really need to be on top of that. And when we think about ransomware a bit further, it's not just phishing, it's all the other parts that go with it. It's once you get in, can you do something? Can you move from one computer to another? Lateral movement, can you exploit something? Can you get usernames and passwords? Can you move them across that infrastructure? So there's lots for CISOs to panic about, and we can get into how they solve those problems, but it's really understanding the basics is really key. So ransomware is one. AI, as I've sort of briefly mentioned, is another one. For CISOs, probably a couple of aspects to that. AI in terms of how the bad guy's using it. So we mentioned ransomware and phishing. They can do that. The cloud now is allowed for infrastructure to be built quickly. So the bad guys can move a lot quicker in terms of what they're doing. So say the government tears down some bit of infrastructure. Within hours, they can be up and running somewhere else doing all their malicious activity. And they can use AI then to help do that a lot quicker. In terms then of, I think that a lot of organizations are looking to create AI, whatever that means. So making sure that they build that securely, whether it's chatbots or something behind the scenes to create a 10x engineer or whatever they need to do. They need to think about that as well. What are they posting on, within their AI large language models? How are they using them? How are they training? All that type of stuff as well needs to be considered. And there's me then from a sort of security professional part with AI. What can we do in terms of our tooling and sort of processes to help clients and customers benefit from AI? So AI is multifaceted. So that's really important. So ransomware, AI, making sure that you're doing secure development lifecycle is still really important. So when you're creating web apps and processes, that you're embedding security from the beginning. We see it done really well, and we also see it done really poorly. Where it's done really poorly, the cost is significant, because it's hard then to retrospectively fit security back into that process. So that is, again, what I would, if I was a CISO, that would be top of my mind. So those are probably the three things. There's probably another 20 more that they need to worry about
Yeah.
and not get much sleep around.
No, so you mentioned obviously the financial sector there, but is there any specific industries that are at higher risk when it comes to not just ransomware, but the AI side of stuff that you mentioned there?
Yeah, so again, financial services, because obviously they deal with money and they're sort of nationally important or globally important, you could argue. So they need to be top of mind. I know firsthand that they spend a significant amount of money on large programs of offensive security and pen testing. So they are doing that. But as we know, there is no silver bullet to security. It's constant. There's never one time in a day, year, month where you can say, right, we're secure, everything's perfect, let's go home, tea and medals, it's job done. It's constantly evolving and being more mature or being better today than you were yesterday, and tomorrow the same thing. So financial services, they've got they spend a lot of money on these things, and I mean to continue to make sure their processes and maturity continue to be better.
So just to touch on the, back to your pen testing experience and knowledge then over the years, Ed, why is it important to have a program of pen testing as opposed to one-off tests?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, thank you. So pen testing is always a point-in-time exercise. So it's always, as that pen test is being done, that this is what the profile of that application or infrastructure, whatever it might be, your pen testing looks like. So the day after we leave the pen test, things could change. Somebody could make a change to a code base. Somebody could change a bit of infrastructure. So that then becomes different. It could become more secure. It could become less secure. So it's really important that you're looking at all aspects of that life cycle. So you're constantly pen testing, constantly vulnerability scanning infrastructure and applications, looking for weaknesses and areas where the bad guys could come in. And one thing I would say as well is there's nothing more disheartening than you do an awesome pen test. You spent hours and hours pen testing. The report is exactly as you want. It's a work of art. You give that report in, and then you go and do the same thing next year, next 6 months, whatever it might be, and it's exactly the same issues. Nothing has been fixed. Nothing has been considered. So it's worth remembering that once you get these pen test reports, actually act upon them, do something with them. And that might be that you don't do anything, that you might just accept that risk. But have in mind that we're going to fix the criticals and the highs quickly. The medium-based issues and the low-based issues you're going to get fixed over time. And one thing I would say as well is, and I hate the expression trusted advisor, I detest it, but it sort of fits in what I'm trying to say is, once that pen test the report has been generated, go back to the pen tester, the team, see, okay, right, we've got this, we don't quite understand this fix, or it doesn't quite fix what we're trying to do, or the context isn't quite right. What other fix can we do? So it needs to be an open dialogue. And then you do more pen testing. And once you get that program in, you start to see sort of root cause issues. Like, are there always hosts that are missing certain patches? Is it some sort of old Oracle box that's been in a corner for 20 years and nobody knows what it does and is too scared to turn it off? So there's all those types of things. So getting that context around the environment comes when you start to deliver lots of pen testing against a client, because you understand a bit more about it.
That ongoing program of pen testing. I can imagine it's expensive,
as
everything seems to be in cyber. But how do you take that proposal to a board, and how do you justify a large program like that when it comes to obviously the ROI and the metrics of it?
Yeah, so the return on investment is something that it can be difficult to sort of get your arms around. So what you need to do is look at metrics, and this is something we do with our large clients. We know that there's 10 critical issues in a report on a pen test, and that's fine. It's worth remembering that most organizations will have issues at some point. The key then is fixing them and fixing them quickly. So those are two metrics. How quickly do you remove highs and criticals and mediums, and then how quickly are you getting them retested so they're actually removed? So there's lots of metrics you can wrap around that. And then the obvious one then is, well, if we don't do any of this, what's the worst case scenario? If we think about large organizations, we know that share price gets affected, reputation in certain sectors will be damaged, and that's difficult to get back once it's lost, once that reputation and trust is gone. So the cost is not doing it can also be measured as well.
So I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, because we did this exercise of this project with Trustwave around getting cybersecurity agenda onto the board's agenda or mind.
Yeah.
But and one of the things that came out of that was obviously storytelling and being able to bring it back down to sort of what they will understand. And you mentioned there about the reputation cost and everything like that. But just going back to your comment at the beginning of this podcast of seeing the good, bad, and ugly, is there one ugly or bad that stands out for you that possibly, going back to that storytelling side of things, that you can relate it to when speaking to a board? Is there one that stands out maybe for you that's right, that was pretty ugly or pretty bad?
So there's many. The one that I do like is for a large bank on the continent, and we were performing a red team engagement. So it was us trying to hack into their organization, sort of almost no holes barred. Just get in and do what you need to do. But we were also doing a social engineering experiment as well. So we're physically trying to get into that bank as well. So we were able to compromise their email, their Office 365. And what we were able to do was to say, in the next 2 weeks, we were able to send an email to reception, say, XYZ is going to come and look at the fire extinguishers. So we'd done our research. We knew exactly what we were doing, where we were going. 2 weeks' time, we turned up with our jackets and all the testing equipment that we need, and say, we're here to do the fire extinguishers. So they let us in kindly. And then we were able to then plant a little Raspberry Pi within the infrastructure. There was a jack, and we just popped it in. And then once we pretended to do the fire extinguisher checks, we didn't let any off. We left, and then we were able to remotely then gain access to inside that environment really quickly. And we were then able to, through more social engineering work, we were able to get a picture of one of the pen testers in the CISO's office. So we were there, we had a picture of him. So it just shows, and the reason why I like that story is it shows the technical part of what we're doing with the red teaming, but also then the other part with the social engineering. Because sometimes, and I do this myself, we think, right, hack on the computer, that's the only way to do it. But sometimes it's a combination of 2 or 3 different things that's going to get you into an environment.
Yeah.
And if we sort of take a step back, when you're sort of, looking to gain access to an environment, and you're sort of, say, a large threat actor who's got unlimited resources, unlimited time, they're going to look at every possibility or every way in, and that is one of them. So it's worth remembering that, pen testing is brilliant. Offensive security is very important. The other parts that there's social engineering and red teaming and purple teaming and all these other things that need to be considered as part of a mature pen test program. OffSec.
Do you see that as something that is changing within the industry then, where people are becoming more aware that there is, for that pen testing program, there's a lot more than just pen testing?
I would say so. So maybe 5 or 6 years ago, what would happen was, here's a pen test, here's our brand new bit of environment, just test that. And we were there, there's these other bits around that have been there for longer. They should probably get tested. Oh, no, we just want the new bit tested. I think now there's definitely an awareness that offensive security, sort of being sort of preemptive in your pen testing or your security work is a way forward. Products, managed security services are also very important, but you need more than just one or the other. You need a few things to work for you in terms of security. Because if I think about how we compromise an environment, it's normally 2 or 3 things have to go wrong. There's that initial foothold, then there's some way of gaining lateral access or lateral movement. So there's 2 things there. And then what we're actually trying to do, whether it's to get data from a database or some sort of proprietary information or whatever it might be. So there's normally 2 or 3 things that go wrong. Whereas, if you're just doing MSS, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. Get that other side of that program into action is how I would describe it.
So, with there being loads of pen testers out there, and I just want to bring it back to Trustwave with this one. Is there anything that you guys are doing differently from your experience of working within the industry and seeing that change? Is there anything different that Trustwave are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you speak to any pen test team, they say they're the best. And I would say the same. My team are the best. So the reason why pen tests are good is because they're good at their job. So how do they get better is training and experience and, really getting on with the job. So what we do in Trustwave, we've got what we call a 5+5. So every pen tester has $5,000 and then 5 days to consume that money.
Okay.
So we're all making sure they're always trained, upskilled. AI, Microsoft seems to be the big thing at the moment. So we're making sure that they do that. We've got a large team, a very large global team, and we do a lot of pen testing. So we're always looking to share war stories between us as well. So making sure that if one person finds a new and novel technique, everybody in the team then is able to sort of utilize that technique as well. Brilliant. Another thing we do as well is, I don't know how familiar you are with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. It's like the de facto standard of how people do pen testing. We contribute to that. So when we're seeing new and novel things, that gets put into the MITRE ATT&CK framework, that then becomes part of the de facto standard. So we're looking at things from a multifaceted aspect in terms of our people, the way we communicate internally, giving back to the community. In terms of how we manage as well, we do lots of large programs of pen testing. So we make sure that technical account managers are on that to really handhold people and organizations through the pain of maturity. Because it's sometimes, if you come from a less mature business and you want to get mature, it's hard. It's really, really difficult because you've got all these issues. When everything's bad, everything's really bad. So we're trying to make sure that we handhold them and say, right, actually, this is what you need to do. You need to, let's take a step back. Is your patching up to date? What's your password policy look like? And then after a period of time, then the maturity increases, and then we look at other things then. So it's making sure that we get that maturity into an organization. So those are the real drivers of what we do in terms of Trustwave. And it's part of our DNA then to make sure that we're always improving and getting better.
I know that you guys have just released, obviously, your financial services research report. I'm just looking at some of I was reading it the other day and just looking at some of the sort of figures and key findings from that. Is there anything that strikes you as maybe, it's obviously it's worrying when anything gets attacked, but is there anything that surprises you in those key findings that you thought maybe would have been worse or actually maybe would have been better? Is there anything that strikes you?
So while I'm old and grey, I've seen a lot of issues and pen test reports over my time. The thing that didn't surprise me, but I was like, oh, okay, this again is almost half of ransomware starts with phishing. 2024 and phishing is still a big problem. And I'll be honest, I don't think it's going to go, as long as we're using email, it is going to be a problem. So while it didn't surprise me, it sort of raised half an eyebrow. Oh, that old chestnut is still there, and we see that. One thing we try and do in terms of our offensive security work is mimic what the bad guys are doing, because that's how you get value from the program of pen testing. So we are mimicking, lots of phishing, lots of ways of getting into an organization, and where we are using AI as much as anybody is, and they are getting better and better. They're looking more realistic. Gone are the days where it would be some dodgy person from some dodgy part of the world who's sending you a really poorly constructed email. That's gone now. Those days are long gone. It's crisp, it's sharp, they look realistic. It's going to make you act quickly. There might be a bit of urgency in there. Your password is expired. Can you do this? So we try and mimic those things. So the old phishing was one that I said raise half an eyebrow for me.
So have you seen an acceleration in in the AI stuff and its progression. I'm guessing, like you mentioned there with the emails, it's taken a while for those dodgy emails that when you do look at them that you do get, and you can look at them and go, oh, that's not even a proper email. But the AI sort of stuff now is do you see that accelerating
Absolutely
really quickly?
Yeah. So there's two parts to that, really. So if we consider that the AI models, they're never going to get worse, they're only ever going to get better.
Yeah.
So you've got to always try and hold that into your mind when you're discussing AI. And we're also seeing then there's a the barrier to entry to be malicious online has been reduced because of
Right. Okay.
Cloud and AI. I think those two things together have reduced the barrier to entry. Like before, you had to be super skilled, you had to know what you were doing, and the really good pen testers and bad guys still need to be really good and still know what they're doing, because one part of what we do is not get found, and even after we've left an environment, trying to make sure that we're not leaving any bits of data, any tooling or anything left behind. So backing out correctly is something really important. Well, that's a skill, and you learn that over time. But the barrier to entry to be noisy and to be malicious and to just generally be a bit of a pain is a lot lower now than what it has been, and that is because of cloud and AI.
Well, Ed, it's been awesome speaking to you. But before I let you go, I just want to ask: is there anything else that we haven't touched on today that you would like to get across to any of the listeners, CISOs, board members, or anything that you think, right, I need to let them know this?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we see, or I see a lot of, is products and CISOs and organizations jumping on the bandwagon of the next brand new product. Now, don't get me wrong, security products are massively important. That's a big part of the defense of an organization. Like having a good email gateway, for example, is really important because that's going to try and filter out a lot of that, those phishing emails. One thing I would suggest that CISOs do is not overly rely on products. The new silver bullet of security is this product. That never works. That's never worked before. The principles of security are making sure the fundamentals are good. If your fundamentals are good, then you become advanced. I tell that to my kids when we're doing the rugby. Passing off a left hand, you've got to be able to do it. So making sure that you've got the basics in place. Again, products are really important, but I've been in situations where we've actually compromised poorly configured security products because they're just not being used and used correctly. So don't get lulled into a false sense of security that this one product is going to solve all my problems. They won't. They will help for sure, but it needs to be part of a wider program of offensive security and then that managed security as well. So it's difficult because you're a CISO, you're busy, you're trying to solve complex problems in complex environments. So I would go for the trusted advisor and say, is this a good product? Do you think this is sensible? And then we can test that product as well as part of our red teaming or purple teaming type exercise. We can say, well, this is good. This has stopped 80% of malicious phishing and it is configured correctly. So we can do all that work as well to help gain that level of assurance.
Brilliant. Awesome, Ed. I really appreciate it, mate. Thank you so much. It's been great
pleasure.
To have a fellow Welshie on the podcast as well, and talking security. So no, I really appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you.